Get outside, get your vibes alive. Music that's not easy. With an prayer, pretend it was. Feel some power, funky reggae, something scar. The old memories that feel so strong. Nathan,
James,
welcome to my taxi.
Welcome to Flat Earth UK Live.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Absolute pleasure, absolute pleasure. And to all of you who have joined us live in the chat, welcome to Flat Earth UK Live. In case you haven't guessed tonight, my guest is Mr. Flat Taxi Rainbow Chemtrails, who's going to take us on a taxi drive across the flat and stationary plane we call Earth. So, James, can you kick us off by telling us, how did you find out the Earth is flat?
Like a lot of people, it was on YouTube. It was that little box in the corner. And it was January last year, maybe December, but I made my first comment on a flat Earth video in January, stating that, look, I can see the sun coming up in the east and it goes down in the west, therefore it's not flat. And left it at that, and must have gone back and just been, had my inquisitive nature and gone back and had a look at more videos. And, obviously Eric DeBay's videos. And if this was just before Mark Sargent was doing his, so I watched a bit of Math Powerland, but the sound quality on his stand-up thing was so bad. I got what he was saying, but didn't see the whole thing. But carried on watching as many videos as I could, and maybe in January last year, there was 200,000 flat Earth videos about, maybe less. And so I gradually got to grips with it, and it just dawned on me. And what really got me was that I hadn't worked this out myself.
Yeah,
I had never
exactly
thought about it. I'd never considered the Earth not to be a spinning ball. So that's where I found out about it, on YouTube.
And since then, you've gone out and done a bit of, I'm going to say this correctly, keeping it flat, which was back in October. Is that right?
Yeah, I was thinking about doing these street interviews. I was thinking I wanted to add something to the Flat Earth community and the YouTube thing and be part of it. So I was thinking about these street interviews, and then one night, strangely enough, I was listening to Patricia Steer, and I'd just been thinking about it the night before, and then she mentioned, oh, I wish someone would go out and do some street interviews. And that was it. I was already prepared to do it. So the next day I went out with my tripod and my Canon SX50, which I bought for videoing all the planes in the sky leaving these trails. And so I went out with my tripod just down to my local shops and started asking people questions. I'd start by I'd introduce myself. I'd say, hello, I'm just here to ask a few questions about the universe. And that was it, really. It would all stem from there. And then eventually I'd ask them, is there any possibility we're not living on a spinning ball globe? And then it went from there into the flat Earth. And
I mean, you've obviously moved on. Sorry, I was going to say you've moved on to doing this a bit more in a face-to-face way on camera, but you're talking about very real interactions that you're having with people that are in your cab. I mean, have you come across anybody that you've spoken to that's actually agreed with you on the subject of flat Earth?
Yeah, so with the keeping it flat, I wasn't on camera, and neither were my subjects, because that was the only way I could interview them. And obviously in the cab, I'm talking with people, then I'm relaying the information on a YouTube video afterwards. And there are people who embrace it and who can see it after I've explained. You kind of got to explain what the flat Earth is and how the North Pole's in the center. And I'm always using my steering wheel and saying, look, the North Pole's in the center, around here's the South Pole with ice further around, and the sun and moon going around 3,000 miles above us doing a yin-yang sign sort of thing. And so I've had people who have embraced it, and I've had people who have heard about it through just seeing their links on their social media. And I've met a couple of people who did know about it, but the percentages are very much in the single units. You know, maybe 5 people out of 100 knew about it. Or I don't really have much recollection of people really knowing about it like I have.
I suppose it's because it's such a short journey. Is a cab journey ever going to be long enough to drop the bombshell of flat Earth on somebody?
That's it. I generally flat earth them just at the end of the journey, just because I'm pretty worn out. Because if I'm talking about it all day with everyone, then by the end of the day I'm kind of tired about it. So I just hit them up at the end of the journey when I know that I'm not going to start sweating when they start asking me too many questions, and I can just give them a brief introduction to it before the journey finishes.
And what's the worst reaction you've had so far to the bombshell that is the Earth being flat?
Well, you would have thought that having a car full of businessmen would be quite a heated conversation, but you know, they're all quite jovial about it, and you know, they'll carry on being joking like they're in the office. I had a couple of guys the other day who were sort of, one was wearing a football top, and one of the guys couldn't quite get it, and his face was a little bit contorted with like, oh, this can't be happening. But I don't remember at this precise moment in time, I don't remember anyone who was really objectional to it, because generally in a cab drive you agree with the driver because you want to get to your destination.
Well, have you had actually anybody raise the topic with you?
Yes. This one girl, I was driving one Friday night up to North London, she was going to a squat actually, and she knew a few people that I knew and stuff like that, so we had a few things in common. And then just towards the end of the journey, she said, "Oh, have you heard about these flat earthers?" I said,
"No way."
Yeah,
So she was bringing the subject fully up with you, the cabbie. That's mad.
Yeah, she as if she heard it and just couldn't believe it and couldn't get to grips with it. Yeah, she was called Melody, and she's a lovely girl actually, and she's been in touch since via text and asked how I was getting on and vice versa. And that was hilarious. It was really funny. It was really great to have somebody ask me about it. You know, so what goes around comes around.
Well, you've also had some people in your cab that are of a certain degree of influence, certainly in media. Can you tell us a bit about some of the people of note that you've had in your cab?
Yeah, well, when I've been talking about them with the, well, I spoke to Jonathan Dimbleby, the BBC presenter, and
Cool.
You don't get much higher than that in terms of BBC presenting. He
Yeah,
knew about
cool.
geoengineering, and I just had to drop the subject with him about geoengineering and mention that it wasn't good. He didn't really know that much about it. But previously I've had everyone from Johnny Vaughan to Dermot O'Leary, Helen Mirren, Brian Blessed, and I was driving Jay-Z around for quite a few years when he did that single with Rihanna in like 2008. For a few weeks I drove him around. So, but with a lot of these big celebs, I won't really mention stuff like this. But yeah. So I feel I've driven everyone around in London. I know what everyone's up to. I know where they all live. You know, on a general average analysis of what's going on. You know.
Definitely.
I've even driven around Freemasons
as much as you can possibly be. And it seems from watching your videos, at least from my point of view, that the more I watch, the more confident you seem to be getting in your approach to this and the stories that you tell about who you're telling it. So maybe in future, if you have Jay-Z back in the car or Rihanna back in the car, you'd perhaps start broaching the subject with them in the future, do you think?
Yeah, I can always inform them about stuff and let them do their own research. There's no harm in that. You know, as long as you get your timing right. Like I said, just towards the end of the journey is always a good point. But I don't think it's the big people I need to influence, really, funnily enough, because I would do. I would definitely, if the opportunity arises, Nathan, I'll definitely let them know. I don't miss an opportunity.
Well, you've certainly had enough people in your cab to tell about this. Have you had repeat fares that have come back and got back in your cab after you've dropped this bombshell on them?
I have picked up people again after I've dropped them off. I can't remember if any of the ones are the ones that I've told about it, and they've got. But generally speaking, people who I've told in the area, they're still just getting on with their life, and so therefore, in a way, you know, nothing's changed except their perception of the world is going to change if they look into it further. That's what I've realised. It's always, if it is flat as we know it is, it has always been this way. So it's just everyone's perceptions, and my perception that's changing.
I mean,
of this reality.
Do you get a general impression with people when they get in? Is there a certain feeling you get from a guy who gets in the cab or a girl who gets in the cab that they might be more approachable or more susceptible to hearing the information?
No, because I'll give you a great example. The other morning I drove a couple from South London to a hotel, and they were an older business couple, and it was as if the guy had married his personal assistant, and they were in the back going through dates and working out their schedules and being very regimental about stuff. And I got out my lavender oil, because I keep lavender oil in the car, just to chill myself out. So I dabbed the lavender oil on, and they actually shut up for like 3 minutes when they smelt the lavender oil. And but then just towards the end of the journey, I mentioned, hey, have you heard what they're talking about on YouTube? I was saying the earth might be flat. They're talking about the earth being flat. And the guy really was interested in it, and was like, because he was kind of one of these guys who has been saying this all along, or something like this. And but I just hadn't expected that sort of response from the businessman. But he endorsed it and was really happy and gave me a tip.
Cool.
Oh, and another time I drove another time I drove a family just a short distance across to Kensington, and they were kind of an American family with teenage kids in the back, 2 teenage kids, an older father and a younger wife. And just at the end of the journey, I said, "Oh, you heard what they're talking about on YouTube?" Or I said, "Do you go on YouTube much?" That's always a good thing if there's kids around. "Oh, do you go on YouTube? Do you check things out?" And they were very interested in it, and they said they were going to go and check it out. And he gave me a £20 tip at the end, as if I had inspired them or said something that he could never say.
So cool. One of the best stories I heard this year, in my humble opinion, was your story about getting on the radio. That was brilliant. Can you give us a bit of a rendition about how that came about? Give us the long.
Getting on LBC with Nick Abbott. Yeah, between Christmas and New Year, Nick Abbott's one of the most awake DJs, but he'll talk about a conspiracy, but not for very long. And he got to F, and I rang up the next day, and he was a few letters later, but you could always go back and insert a word in. Yeah, he with each letter of the alphabet, they talk about an event of the year. And so I could either hit him on the E, being the earth is flat, F, flat earth, could I hit him with the G, geocentric, or I could hit him with the H, heliocentric. But I got on the radio and I said, "All right, Nick," I said, "thanks a lot for having me on the show." And he was like, "Oh, it's great to have you." And I said, "I'd like to talk about the earth being flat." And there was silence. And he was like, "What?" I said, "The earth's flat." And almost silence again. I had to kind of shout, "The earth's flat." And I could just hear it echoing around the radios through the UK and abroad. And I said, and there was kind of silence, you know what I mean? You can imagine.
Definitely.
And I said, well, people approach the subject trying to not look stupid, and they try and prove that we're on a globe. But and people often mention the pictures of Earth from space, but if you look into that, you'll find that they're either artist impressions or composites, because Obama announced last year that NASA have released only the second photograph of the Earth from space, and people have already debunked that as being artwork. And kind of as soon as I said the Obama thing, he hit the button for a soundbite where Obama comes on in his voice. So he's got this little soundbite, Obama soundbite. And then that was like, and he was like, all right, thanks, Jimmy. Thanks a lot for your help. I'll definitely go on YouTube and check that out.
Oh, right. I didn't get that bit. So he played a little soundbite.
Yeah, I probably hadn't mentioned that, but yeah, he just, because you know what those radio DJs are like, especially Nick Abbott, loads of sound bites just to make the show fun and to help him move on. So it's like, boom, change the subject, move on.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned the, I think I don't know if it got the Epic label, but the if you want to call it that, Blue Marble 2015. Loads of people have suggested that was a pure reaction to Flat Earth. Now that might be people being a bit too big for their boots and assuming we're making more of an impression than we actually are. What's your feelings?
Yeah, it was so bizarre that they actually announced it was the second photograph of the Earth from space. Why would you bother announcing that when no one was really asking for it? But the funny thing was, I was in the NASA feed quite a lot before that, just saying, oh, a photograph of the Earth from space would be enough. And I mentioned that quite a few times. And then almost a few weeks later, they give us a photograph of the Earth from space, and everyone debunks it as being because they've used Photoshop on it, and it's completely unrealistic, and it's not an oblique spheroid or pear-shaped like NASA is telling us the Earth actually is these days.
Yeah, they've had all sorts of renditions and adjustments of the Blue Marble picture, and they can never seem to get the right size of the continents. It's all completely different as you line the composites up year after year. And as you say, NASA themselves have had interviews where they will confess themselves that, in their own words, it has to be Photoshop. It can't be a real photo. And you kind of nod your head and go, what? Why can't we have a real photo?
Yeah. And why can't we have a video?
Absolutely.
Why
can't we have 24-hour rotation as Math Powerland's screaming for? Well, maybe we'll get one. It'll just be terrible. I mean, as you drive around London, you get to see a lot of the advertising and the billboards. Do you see a lot of subliminal globes now that you know about the globe lie in the advertising and billboards?
I've seen a few globes as artworks in random places. Like, there's some very colourful globes down the road in an art shop, almost with pink seas, and I haven't had a closer look. And then I saw like a box, you know, like you put your toys in a box as a kid and put the lid on top. Well, there's a glass box with loads of globes in them, big ones, little ones, small ones, down in Islington, outside, just as you walk into a bar that I saw yesterday. So I'm definitely going to do some videos of these things. But in terms of the subliminal advertising, and I mean, I've been observing the architecture around London and the Masonic nature of it ever since I started driving about 12 years ago, and you know, been doing my best just to record the little features of architecture that there is and put it up on Flickr. Yeah, I've got a Flickr page. And but then recently, no, I haven't really seen anything to do with the flat Earth. But now I've got a product. I don't know whether you know about this.
This is the flat Earth tape.
Tape made up.
Yeah, I saw it. I saw it on eBay.
I call it the original flat Earth sticky tape. And there we go. You can have a look at it there. And it's been working really well. I'm really happy with it. It's a lovely little product. And yeah, it's on eBay. So check the link on my video for further details. But yeah, I've got a few of these going, so get them while you can.
Cool. I mean, it all helps to raise awareness. I love it. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got the name Flat Earth, Mr. Flat Taxi Rainbow Chemtrails? So tell us a bit about your chemtrail work that you've done, because there's a lot of it on your channel. Yeah,
sure. Well, that's why I started my YouTube channel, because I realized I've got, you know, when I got my smartphone, I realized I could do a video and just upload it pretty quickly. And I thought I'd just record the sky and the events going on for about a year. And of course, you can't really stop doing it once you've sort of started doing it, and it's become a bit of a feature. But it was after about 2 years, and it was last April, that I actually got a viral video of I woke up one morning and the sky was just, it was a Sunday morning, it was 7 o'clock, and the sky was just full of these trails. Up above me, crisscrossing, in the distance, all over. And for a Sunday morning, I mean, for any morning, that was just ridiculous. And so
For anybody who's
I
watching it, they might hear the word chemtrail and have not the slightest clue what you're talking about. So can you just give us a very basic explanation of what a chemtrail actually is?
Well, a chemtrails is kind of a slang military term for a persistent contrail. And these have been used for cloud seeding purposes and for military war purposes and for weather, most commonly for weather manipulation, where they'll but it's a hard one to get your head around. But you just got to look at events like the recent event in Cyprus, where the whole island was covered in chemtrails, and because on that island they're very good at predicting the weather, and they never get it wrong. And after these chemtrails, the weather changed, and so that's what brought it to the attention of the mainstream and the populace in Cyprus. And then and so chemtrails are geoengineering. And geoengineering is climate engineering. If you go to the Met Office website, you will find a geoengineering page, and on that page it's got other links to other news articles. And the number one suggestion of how they'd like to help us with climate change and possibly cool the climate is they'd like to put mirrors, giant mirrors, in space, which is the most ridiculous, crazy concept, let alone idea that they're asking for funding for. So, you just got to say, well, if they're talking about putting giant mirrors in space and they're serious about it, then these are crazy motherfucking psychopaths, aren't they?
Well, you mentioned about the weather and having good weather predictions. One of the things that once I figured out the Earth is flat, that you start to think of lots of other things that you presented within the information and how it's presented. And the weather, certainly here in the UK, you will immediately picture a map with Southern Ireland missing and Northern Ireland only. And it's all obviously CGI imagery. And you have to ask yourself, with all of these satellites that are supposedly flying above our heads with, tens of thousands of cameras on them, why don't we have real-time imagery? When they show us satellite imagery of weather, it's pathetic. It's just a jerky, rubbish image that's not in real time. It does boggle the mind when, you're telling me we're supposed to have mirrors going up there, but we don't have use of the satellites that are up there as far as I'm concerned, because they're not there.
Yeah, well, while we're still talking about these crazy mirrors in space, when the particulates from these contrails and chemtrails fill the sky, it's almost like that is reflecting the sunlight away. So within the reasons they've got for geoengineering, number one is mirrors in space, and number three is like aerosol dispersals of particulates to reflect the sunlight. They've kind of explained what they're doing, and often when you see there's no blue sky and they're blocking out the sun, that's it. But then going back to these what you were saying about the satellite imagery, we do get these satellite imagery of the weather, like these images over Cyprus recently that show the island just obliterated with these chemtrails. But I thought it was something worth looking into, a little bit more, and I was about to do that really if I had time, because we should have and that brings the ISS into question, the images from that as well and what they're doing. So you're on the verge of a big topic there, but I just wanted to mention one more thing about my tape. I think it's really good. You can use it as a bumper stickers, and you can put it on glass and stuff like that, so it's very versatile. But I'll be showing you images of where it's gone in the future.
Cool. Can you also tell us, I know that we're quite limited in terms of your battery life because you're out and about.
I'm doing all right actually for the time being, but if I fade away, you know why.
Exactly. But while we've still got you, can you tell us about, you've got 3 channels, is that correct, on YouTube?
Yeah, I have. Yeah, I've got my obviously Mr. Flat Taxi Rainbow Chemtrails, and it used to be called You Might Have Missed This, and all in one word. And I had about 250 subscribers or who are interested in the geoengineering and the chemtrails and the weather manipulation and the climate engineering, solar radiation management. And then since then, I've got about another 150 subscribers to do with the flat Earth. And I wanted to keep the chemtrails in the title because now I'm talking about flat Earth as a taxi driver. I've still got a lot of chemtrail content, and I still feel it's an important topic and can't be looked past. But I would like to say that there's been some very nice clear days where we've got normal clouds in the sky and blue sky, and it seems like there's a lot less trails in the sky at this moment in time in February 2016. But it makes me think that the aeroplanes that are leaving these trails have gone somewhere else, like Cyprus or New York. I heard New York got hit pretty bad the other night, and David Weiss has been doing a lot of coverage of these chemtrails. But yeah, I've got 2 other channels. I've got a Keeping It Flat, where I went out last October and did those street interviews, and there's about 3 hours worth of content there and 37 interviews, and they're really nice. You know, it's really nice to have captured that moment in time, and I'd like to do it again. And
you mentioned just before we went out that you'd actually interviewed a journalist inadvertently. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, well, this was like the second morning I went out, and I just started chatting to him. It might have been the first morning, but I just started stopped him, asked him if he wouldn't mind answering some questions about the universe, and we got kind of towards the end of the interview, and he wasn't budging. His body language was straight at me. His eye contact was straight at me. I was getting towards the end of my questions and feeling a bit tired, but I had to carry on. And at the end of the conversation and interview, I said, "Oh well, you've taught me an awful lot during this interview. Thanks a lot. You know, you've definitely improved my interview skills." And he goes, "Oh well, that's interesting. I'm actually a journalist." So, and I think he's a journalist for like a business magazine or. Anyway, it's all there on Keeping It Flat. And yeah, I've got another
I
channel.
think there was another one as well. Didn't you have a journalist in the cab as well?
Oh yeah, I've had a few. I can't remember right now.
I wish I could remember off the top of my head, because there was another really good story that was on Mr. Flat Taxi Rainbow Chemtrails channel. But you've also got a third channel which you sort of publicise some of the really good flat Earth information that's out there. Can you tell us about your third channel as well?
Yeah, Flat Earth Addict. And again, I wanted to do something to be part of Flat Earth, and it just seemed like I'd made a little playlist of all the best little videos that had a little glimmer of flat Earth in it, a little bit of proof, either a weather balloon going up to 100,000 feet. So I started to mirror these videos, and I'm up to about 80 videos now, and a lot of people have recited my channel as helping them do their research, because some of the videos that I mirrored and re-uploaded have actually come down from the original channels since.
Oh right, so you've got the only copy that's currently in circulation for some of those videos then?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, like one by Joseph about the International Space Station possibly being U-2 spy planes, and Robin Poe mentioned that in one of her interviews. So that was nice. And I had a lovely Bulgarian couple in the car the other night, and they're quite new to the UK, I think. And just in the last mile of the journey, I mentioned it, and they mentioned that they had heard about it the night before, and heard about my channel, Flat Earth Addict.
Really?
And they expressed an enthusiasm of how it's an opportunity for us to change the world for the better. And it was really nice to hear that fresh viewpoint of it, because once you've been looking at it for a year, you don't know you forget your original passion for it, in a sense, or you forget what you thought about it and how it could change the world. You know, you often get, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, before we wrap up, can you just tell us in your own words, why is flat Earth so important to you?
Well, I was actually looking for something better. I was searching the internet for something better, and I would never have thought that this wasn't a spinning ball and that they were actually lying to us. And it's all about truth. It's all about being able to tell our children what the truth is, and so they can move forward. And also the thought of there being something more special in terms of a creator being involved, and something more to learn, and a better place to be, and something that's. So why is it so important? I think you've got an impression of what I'm feeling, but you know, it's hard to say. It's hard to say right now. You know, I've got a pop video, Nathan.
You were telling me about it just before the show started. Do you want to tell us a bit about it?
Well, before I'm about to change careers. I'm moving into personal training and fitness instructing.
Oh, okay.
I did a course last year, and I'm actually tying that into my personal flatness training, where I advise people on how to talk about flat earth with people. But before I changed careers, I needed to represent myself musically on YouTube. And so I had a song that people liked and was about my experiences taking a little amplifier down to Dalston and playing music for the West Indian community down there and anyone in the street, and just having a good time playing old ska music. So I wrote a song about it and did a video, and I posted it on my Flat Taxi page the other day, and I look forward to hearing what you think about it.
Well, can you play it out for us now? Is that a possibility? I mean, I know we're live, but why not play it out if you can?
Yeah, let's do that. Here we go.
Once it's finished, if you can, once that song's done, if you can give us your sign out that you usually give us, and then I'll wrap it up and say goodbye to the viewers. Sure,
let's do that. I'll do that now. Peace, love, and having fun. On the street with an amplifier, 10 watts, pure soul power, funky reggae, soulful ska, the old rhythm and blues and Louis Armstrong.
To all of you who have joined us this afternoon for Flat Earth UK Live, thank you ever so much for being here. And to you, James, thank you for being my guest. You've been absolutely superb.
I love you, Nathan. Keep up the good work, and we'll speak soon.
You too. Thank you very much for being here. I've been Nathan Oakley. I'll see you all in the next video.